Good day, everybody. Welcome to Rocky Mountain Readings, where yesterday we broke into a brand new book. It seems very exciting. Mystic Tales from the Zohar with commentary by Ariel Weinman. It seems real exciting hearing stories. I think from the story we got yesterday, you could draw that the Christian concept of in the book of Revelations of a war in heaven and Leviathan. I like how the book mentioned yesterday that generally came from the Babylonian creation account, Enuma Elish, and it had to do with when Hashem was creating the dry land, that the waters did not want to recede, as if it was a rebellion. So what a joke, but there's always something you can draw from. As long as you keep plugging in and reading, you're going to pick something up somewhere along the line. And today we're into another mystic tale from the Zohar. So let's just jump right in and see how it goes. We'll see if we can cover a couple chapters today. Just like we finished off yesterday, the book of Adam, 2 accounts. Wow, that sounds kind of interesting. So the story is only this little paragraph. A book given to Adam in the Garden of Eden flew away when he was expelled, but with his pleading to Hashem, it was restored to him. Well, isn't that an interesting story? Okay, Rabbi Abba said a book was actually given from above to the first man, and through it he became acquainted with the higher wisdom. That same book was then given to the sons of God, the wise of the generations, and all who were privileged to study it learned the higher wisdom. That book was given to the first man from the master of mysteries, with 3 messengers appointed to deliver it to him. When Adam was about to leave the Garden of Eden, he took that book with him, but when he actually left, it swiftly flew away. He prayed and cried before his master, and the book was returned to him as before, so that this wisdom would not be lost to humankind, and so that humans might endeavor to acquire knowledge of their master. Similarly, we have learned that Enoch had a book from the very same place from which the book of the generations of Adam had come. And he cites a source of 1 verse 37. Vishal, welcome. Welcome, Sheila. This book of the generations of Adam, of those in his likeness, Rabbi Isaac said, the Holy One, blessed be he, showed to Adam the image of all those generations that would come to be in the world, together with all the sages of the world and the world's kings appointed to have political power over Israel. When his perception reached as far ahead as the time of David, and he noted that words, how weighty your thoughts seem to me, O God, how great their number, from Psalm 139:17. This is the book, Genesis 5:1. Indeed, there was a book, as it had been taught, from 137b, that when Adam was in the Garden of Eden, God sent down to him a book. It was given to him by Raziel, the holy angel appointed over the mysteries of the holy worlds, and contained celestial engravings and holy wisdom. And 72 kinds of wisdom were explained by means of 670 engravings of celestial mysteries. In the middle part of the book were engravings of wisdom to inform him of 1,500 keys that had not been disclosed even to the holy celestial beings. They were all concealed and sealed in this book until that time that it was given over to Adam. The celestial angels gathered to hear that same wisdom and to acquire it. And they said, exalt yourself over the heavens, O God, let your glory be over all the earth, from Psalm 57:12. Just then, Hadarniel, a holy angel, imitated to him, calling, Adam, Adam, conceal the precious thing that has been given to you, for permission has not been granted to the celestial ones to know the greatness of your master. You alone are so privileged. So Adam concealed the book and kept it with him until he left the Garden of Eden. In that earlier period, he studied it, occupying himself all that day with the concealed knowledge of his master, and he discovered the higher mysteries of which even the celestial servants are unaware. When he sinned, transgressing his master's command, the book flew away from him. Adam then beat his head and went into the water of the Gihon up to his neck until his body became moldy and his brightness vanished. At that moment, the Holy One, blessed be he, signaled to Raphael to return the book to Adam, and he did so. Adam then continued to study it, and he gave it to his son Seth, and similarly it reached all the following generations until it came to the hands of Abraham, who through that book knew to discern the greatness of the master. And it is said also that also to Enoch a book was given, and he too grasped through it the glory of the eternal one. And then notes. Interesting story for sure. Yeah, it shows where they get all these notes from. Or all the, yeah. Should I be reading this? It depends on how many notes there are. The nature of the book of Adam, as discussed in Sefer Noad, mirrors the Babylonian conception that human destiny is written out in detail in a celestial book. The more abstract concept, however, quite clearly merges with the sense of concrete book. The Zohar includes a number of quotations brought in the name of the book of Adam. Some of these quotations relate what is to occur at a future time. On that day, the temple will be completed. The fathers will awaken song in both the upper and lower worlds. Another such quotation foretells the coming of Elijah, describing as a spirit clothed in a physical body, but also able to exchange that body for a luminous one, thus allowing him to exist as an angel among angels, yet always able to retrieve his material body again. Elsewhere, it is reported that a Daver, a student of mystic wisdom living in the south, had seen in the books of the ancients and in the book of Adam certain information such as the number of earths and firmaments, the sphere-like shape of the inhabited world, bizarre races of people resulting from various atmospheric differences, day occurring where elsewhere it is night, and place where there is virtually only day, and the like. In addition, the book of Adam is mentioned as a source for knowledge of metoposcopy, the reading of a person's character as it is revealed through his facial features. Interesting. Just as in earlier sources, some passages in the Zohar convey the concept of Sefer Toledot Adam in a thoroughly abstract way, independent of any reference to an actual or concrete book, posing as a rhetorical question. And did he, Adam, have a book? One such passage explains, these Zoharic legends would appear to be further developments of the kind of legend of the book of Adam found in that second recension of the book of Noah. But if the Zoharic legend on this motif were influenced by Sefer Noad or by a source similar to it, those same Zoharic passages suggest that the author also altered the earlier form of the legend in a subtle but significant way. The character of the book of Adam is described in Sefer Noad essentially as a disclosure of the future course of history, along with certain practical instructions. In the Zoharic accounts, that same book of Adam is said to contain mysteries of the higher world. This definition of the content of the book of Adam would appear to allude to the very subject and content of the Zohar itself. It is through the book of Adam that the latter came to know Dogmata Ila, the higher wisdom. And like the book of Enoch, which is said to have come from the same source, it contains the Raza di Dogmata, the mystery of wisdom. In of the larger human condition, beginning with the expulsion from paradise, yet upon Adam's pleading, the book is restored to him. This form of the legend might imply that with Kabbalah, one aspect of the very nature of exile is, in fact, nullified. What follows is an exile qualified spiritually by our possession of mystic wisdom, to whatever degree man can be said to possess it. The book is returned to Adam both because of the latter's supplication and weeping and because God has concurred that it is important that the book with its higher wisdom remain in human hands. The Zoharic retelling of the legend conveys a strong note of ambivalence, as Hashem wills and yet does not will that man should acquire the secret knowledge. This ambivalence of divine intent brings to mind a similar ambivalence on the part of Bar Yochai himself in the Idra Rabbah, as to whether he should disclose the deepest secrets in mystic teachings. Bar Yochai realizes the danger of revealing those mysteries of the very wisdom he had discovered. It then happens that in a cave, Rabbi Yossi discovers a book placed in a cleft of the rock wall, a book containing 72 engravings of letters that had been given to Adam. Through these engravings, Adam knew all the wisdom concerning the highest holy beings and those impure shells situated behind the mill, an intermediary sephira, which turns beyond the veil among the unseen celestial essences. And through them, he knew all that was destined to occur in the world that day, that a cloud will arise from the west to cast the world into utter darkness. When Rabbi Yossi, together with Rabbi Yehuda, begins to study the book, to grasp its mysteries, and to discuss them, a flame of fire, impelled by a strong gust of wind, appeared and struck their hands, and the book vanished from their sight. Perplexed, the two sages come to Rabbi Simeon Bar Yochai, who inquires whether they had been reading in these engravings concerning the time, concerning itself surviving, concerning Jonathan ben Uziel. This story shares the same surrealistic motif of a loss of writings with other narrative passages in the Zohar, passages unrelated to the subject of messianic calculations. In one such story, a stranger wandering into a marvelous cave is handed a bundle of writings. But when he later presents the writings to Rabbi Eliezer and the latter opens the bundle, a ray of fire appears all around him, and before he can look at them, the writings fly away from his hands. In still another account telling of the aftermath of the death of Rabbi Simeon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Yehuda in a dream sees Rabbi Simeon ascending upon four wings together with a Torah scroll and all the books of higher mysteries and lore, bringing them up with him to the heavens until they all disappear from view. It is stated there that only a small measure, 1 omer of that wisdom remains, presumably the Zohar, considering its basically ephemeral nature, remains in human possession. This theme of disappearance is found in various passages in the pages preceding the legends of the Book of Adam, in the Zohar's exegesis on Bereshit. Rabbi Hamnuna, it is related, comes from the other world to reveal mysteries to the fellows, but before they are able to recognize him, he disappears. A few pages later, the reader notes the comment that the human being lacks the permanence that marks the higher angelic beings, a thematic note that relates also to the Creator's efforts to give a quality of permanence to the world. The light created on the first day was given and then withdrawn to be restored only at a future time of messianic fulfillment. In the first of the Zoharic passages translated above, no angels' names are mentioned. In the second, it is Raziel who initially gives to the material world and the means to control it, and to finding protection from evil forces, given free rein in the fallen world. Cohen Alora examines the subject of Sephirodim in the Zohar, and a representation of the world man can relate through magic. This same subject, however, bears other nuances that point in very different directions. Though the Book of Adam does acquire negative significance as a book capable of leading man astray from God, it also has a most positive significance in that through that book, Abraham came to the true faith, and also through his reading of the book, Noah arrived at an understanding of correct forms of divine service. The import of Sefer Adam in the Zohar has to be examined also in terms of the particular explanation of idolatry and pagan worship, which we will suggest is expressed precisely by means of the complex role of the Book of Adam. In this, too, the motif of the Book of Adam serves as a vehicle of the Zohar's self-perception as it voices a basic ambiguity that cuts across the text. In Sefer Noad, we read that when Adam is expelled from Eden, he receives the book from the angel. The angel counsels him on the spirit in which to study this book, namely with purity, humility, and obedience. Implicit in this precaution is the possibility that the book might be studied in an improper spirit. The negative implication of this warning, which according to Sefer Noach accompany the giving of the book, echoes in various passages in the Zohar. True, we are informed that Noah studied the book of Adam and also the book of Enoch with diligence, and I learn from them the appropriate forms by which to worship God, the sacrifices, the counter possibilities, however, generally proves to be the case. We read that whenever Hashem allowed the deep mysteries of that away from the service of the most exalted one to the worship of strange powers. Another Zoharic passage speaks of the wisdom of the Bnei Kedim, the children of the East, received through the patriarch Adam when he transmitted it to his other children while reserving the purest wisdom for Isaac. Rabbi Abba said, I once chanced to be in a town where the descendants of the children of the East lived, and they taught me some of the ancient wisdom with which they were familiar. They also had in their possession books containing their wisdom, while Rabbi Abba noted in their books passages completely in consonance with the particular idea presented in the Zohar text at that point. He also noted in the same books rites and ceremonies connected with the worship of the stars. The books contained in the proper directions for concentrating one's thoughts upon the heavenly bodies so as to draw their spirits nearer the worshiper. Once Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Hia were walking together, continuing on their way until darkness fell. Then they sat down and discussed various subjects until dawn. When they continued on their way, Rabbi Hia commented, Look at the dawn breaking through in the eastern sky. At this moment, all the children of the east who live among the mountains of light will be worshiping that light which announces the imminent appearance of the sun. The sun itself has many worshippers, but these are the worshippers of its messenger, which they call the God of the shining pearl. And their oath is Allah of the shining pearl. Yet do not suppose that this worship is false and empty of substance. Rather, it actually contains a wisdom known from the earliest days. Before sunrise, when the light of dawn is first seen, an angel appointed to direct the sun appears with the holy letters of the heavenly blessed name inscribed upon his brow. With the power of those letters, he first opens all the windows of the heavens and then flies away. Then he enters with the aura of brightness surrounding the sun and waits there until the sun rises to cast its light over all the world. And that very angel, the sun's guardian, is appointed also over gold and rubies. It is for this reason that sun worshippers and devotees of the dawn worship that angel, for through various spots and signs which they have received from earlier tradition, and which they also detect in the sun, they are able to identify the place of gold and rubies. This narrative passages conveys both an appreciation and a condemnation of pagan worship. Although the name Allah is mentioned, the sense of the worship is decidedly pagan. The Zohar, in fact, viewed both Christianity and Islam very much as pagan religions. Such worship, it is conveyed, is not empty of substance, but is rather a misinterpretation or misunderstanding both of the splendor of nature and of the ancient wisdom going back to much earlier days. Interesting. Come on, you. I don't know why. The reader notes a similar pattern within the Zoharic exegesis that traces the magic arts and the divination of Bilam to the fallen angels, Azah and Azael. In this detail, the Zohar locates the sources of magical knowledge and practices in those who are both angels and in a fallen state. Those arts and in their wisdom are hints of celestial origin, even while they are transformed by a state of fallenness. The magic arts are never negated or denied. They are considered to be true, but at the same time, like idolatry, they comprise a partial truth severed from their larger, more complete context. And as such, they are more likely than not to be misused. Their source lay in real forces in the upper worlds, and they are therefore efficacious even though that source is not located in the very highest powers. The theurgic nature of a considerable part of Zoharic teaching and its practices, with its intent to influence the upper worlds and indirectly our world as well, might account for the Zohar's. Oh, come on. I don't know why this keeps jumping to the wrong page. The Zohar's own ambivalence attitude towards magic, which is accepted as true even though its practice is forbidden. The same ambivalent attitude towards magical arts is evident in the Zoharic traditions ascribing those arts to Adam. It is written that he took them from the Garden of Eden in the form of knowledge of the leaves of the tree, while it is claimed at the same time that neither he nor his family actually practiced such magic arts, which were later employed for purposes of evil and rebellion against Hashem. Idolatry, to the mind of Zohar's author, is a partial truth rooted in the reality of the impure powers within the total cosmic scene. We read, for example, of the celestial impure power which presides over the idolatrous act performed by Jeroboam and which was indispensable to his success. The Zoharic author explains idolatry by referring to the actual existence of the impure spirit who must be appeased in order to be subjugated. Furthermore, the gods of the nations mentioned in the Bible, we are told, are not mere idols, but actual celestial figures with real, though limited, power in this world. These fragmentary narrative passages and comments from the Zohar all point to the idea that primordial knowledge, which is in itself celestial and holy, the kind of knowledge which the Zoharic author believes can be identified with its own teachings, can be corrupted and placed in the services of the forces representing the antithesis of holiness. Or stated conversely, that which appears as pagan in nature, belief, and practice has its root in what was disclosed by celestial powers or even by Hashem himself. While the two kinds of wisdom are not to be identified with one another, there is nevertheless a definite kinship between the two. For the Zoharic author, both are rooted in the same theosophical reality, though one is distorted. Forgive me. It follows that the Zoharic author identifies his own teachings with the mysteries of the Book of Adam, properly understood, conceived of the emergence of polytheism as a partial and hence distorted grasp of that same primordial wisdom ascribed to a divine source. The basis of this belief and worship of strange gods and of idolatrous practices, including magic arts, is precisely the reality of the Sitra Adra, the impure powers countering the forces of holiness in the Zoharic cosmic picture. Paganism, it follows, is not empty of substance, but it contains a true ancient wisdom in a partial and distorted state. In his Book of the Pomegranate, Moses de Leon explains the origins of pagan worship simply as an innocent error of judgment, reflecting the opinion that the one God who created the universe wished humans to honor and worship the luminaries and stars only during the course of time. Was the initial monotheistic belief lost, with the rites directed to the sun and stars taking on independent significance in an emerging polytheism. In this view, Moses de Leon was influenced by Maimonides, an influence evident in the particular wording of the statement. In contrast, numerous Zoharic passages present a much more radical explanation of paganism. The Zoharic author understands pagan religion from its beginnings as the actual belief in other powers, a belief which, on one level, is not without validity. To the mind of the Zoharic author, both its own true wisdom and paganism are derived from accurate and distorted readings, respectively, of the Book of Adam and similar primordial revelations. Oh man, my mouse is just not doing what it should be doing. In our own century, Gershom Scholem has forcefully spelled out his thesis that in the Zoharic Kabbalah and its traditions, myth carved a place for itself within the very framework of a monotheistic faith, which, in its classical form, is largely the antithesis of myth. Cosmic conflict, sacred marriage, and an unbounded imagination clothing itself in mythological imagery were all granted entrance into the world of Jewish belief. In its adaptation of the motif of the Book of Adam and in parallel motifs, the mystic author, in whose work we note such an abundance of archetypal images and concepts rooted in cross-cultural myth patterns, might be disclosing something quite significant, his own concealed yet intuitive sense of the basic affinity of the Zoharic teaching with that larger world of religious and mythic imagination and ritual which lies beyond the boundaries of what can be accommodated to Jewish monotheism. The Zoharic author expresses a sense of the ultimate kinship of his teachings with something at the same time with which he clearly could not identify. The Book of Adam, a motif with a long history, becomes, it would appear, a means by which the Zoharic author voices that striking ambiguity. Interesting. All right, the House of the World. All right, the House of the World. The basic structure of existence is constructed, threatened, and will ultimately be perfected as the defiling, threatening force is utterly removed. Let me read that again. The basic structure of existence is constructed, threatened, and will ultimately be perfected as the defiling, threatening force is utterly removed. Sounds pretty clear. But Jacob journeyed on to Sukkot and built a house for himself and made stalls for his cattle. That is why the place was called Sukkot. Genesis 33:17. Beginning his interpretation of this verse, Rabbi Chia referred to another verse. Unless the Lord build the house, its builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman keeps vigil in vain. From Psalm 127:1. He commented, come and note, at the moment that the first stirring to create a universe arose in the divine will, he brought forth from the spark of darkness a mist which then glowed in the midst of the darkness. The light remained above even as it descended below, glistening in 100 different paths, some hardly detectable and others expansive, bringing the house of the world into being. This house is situated at the very center of all that is. How many entrances and chambers it has. It is surrounded everywhere by concealed holy places where the birds of the heavens build nests, each according to its own kind. From its midst there emerges a single large and mighty tree with thick branches and fruit, having abundant sustenance in it for all. That tree ascends upward to the very clouds of the heavens until it disappears from view among three mountains, and then comes into view, both climbing higher and also descending. The house, nourished and watered by the tree, conceals numerous celestial and unknown treasures. In this way, that house was constructed and beautified. The tree is visible during the daylight hours, but at night is hidden from view, while the house, in contrast, is seen at night and is hidden from view during the day. At the hour that darkness sets in, the house appears its doorways all firmly closed in all directions. At once, numerous spirits fly about in the air, seeking to enter and ascend within it, curious as to what it contains. They join with the birds, acquiring their knowledge and flying about and observing until the darkness now attached to the house is awakened and sends forth a single flame and strikes with mighty hammers, opening the doors and cleaving the rocks. That flame then flares both up and down, striking the world, and voices are awakened both above and below. After connecting with air emerging from amidst the pillar of clouds of the inner altar and spreading out in all four directions, a herald immediately ascends and calls out. A million hosts stand to the left and a myriad of myriads to the right, while the herald stands in his place, calling out forcefully. Then so many there are who chant and worship. Two doors open, one to the south, the other to the north. The house ascends and stands, linking the two sides as song is chanted and words of praise ascend. Whoever then enters does so as in a whisper, and the house glistens with six exceeding bright lights, illumining all directions. Streams of balsam flower flowing from there, watering all the wild beasts and the birds, as it is written. You make springs gust forth in torrents. They make their way between the hills, giving drink to all the wild beasts. The wild asses slake their thirst. The birds of the sky dwell beside them and sing among the foliage, from Psalm 104, 10 to 12. And the song continues until daybreak. Then, when dawn appears, the stars and the constellations of the heavens and all their hosts chant songs of praise, as it is written, who set its cornerstone, when the morning stars sang together and all the divine beings shouted for joy, from Job 36, 6 and 7. And note, unless the Lord builds the house, its builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman keeps vigil in vain. Psalm 127, 1. This refers to the sublime king who is constantly engaged in constructing and perfecting that house whenever proper terrestrial worship and devotions ascend from below. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman keeps vigil in vain. Psalm 127, 1. To what time does this refer? To the hour that the darkness of evening sets in, when armed camps wander about through the world. The doors are closed and guarded from all sides to prevent any uncircumcised and unclean one from approaching. As it is stated, awake, awake, O Zion, clothe yourself in splendor, put on your robes of majesty, Jerusalem, holy city. For the uncircumcised and the unclean shall never enter you again. From Isaiah 52, 1. Those whom in the future the Holy One, blessed be he, will remove from the world, who then is uncircumcised and who is the unclean one, to whom the verse refers. Actually, they are one and the same, the very one who enticed Adam and Eve, and whom they followed to cause death for all, and who continues to defile this house until that time when the Holy One, blessed be he, will expel him from the world. And so it is that unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman keeps vigil in vain. Interesting. That same fascination is also evident in our passage, a descriptive account that extends between the foci of dawn and of darkness. Light and darkness, however, serve as a symbolic language in the hands of the Zoharic author, who reveals his highly poetic tendencies in this passage in the light of some Kabbalistic symbols. This account can be understood as one that relates with intricate allusions the story of the formation of the world of the Sephirot, including the Shekinah, the conflict that threatens to endanger the Shekinah, and the resolution of that conflict by the removal of the threat itself. Both tree and house in the account serve as symbols of Sephirot. The tree is Tiferet, the house Malchut, the Shekinah representing redefined as a story. Approaching the first question, it is important to grasp the Zoharic author's tendency to read any and every verse in a biblical text as an allusion to a deeper meaning. This meaning generally concerns the history of the higher supernal world, the creation of this world, and the drama and interactions between the two. Hence, a verse from the biblical account of the life of Jacob, a verse speaking of the patriarchs constructing dwellings for his family and his animals, is here grasped as referring ultimately to the construction of the Shekinah within the configuration of the Sephiroth in the world of emanation. The description comprising the Zoharic interpretations of Genesis 37:17 suggests the intricate processes and modes of divine being coming into existence through emanation. The link confirming the presumed cosmic meaning of the verse from Genesis is located in the verse from Psalm 127:1, which is read as implying that any house that is built is actually built by God. If so, then it is in its ultimate and esoteric level, the verse is grasped as speaking of an act of construction on the part of divine powers within the higher world. A single word in the biblical verse provides a crucial key in the Zoharic interpretation of that verse. The occurrence of the word Sukkot, thatched booths, in the verse in Genesis is immediately associated with the festival of Sukkot and with the commandment to dwell in such booths during the days of that festival, along with the mystic significance of the festival and the festive booth. An entire array of associations reverberate from the word, which a non Kabbalist might assume is employed quite innocently in a verse from the Torah relating to the work activities of Jacob. Zoharic interpretation understands the 7-day Sukkot festival as symbolizing the 7 primordial days that created the world, namely the 7 lower Sephiroth. Those 7 Sephiroth, lower than Binah, are experienced on the 7 days of the Sukkot festival. These symbolic associations transform a prosaic statement in the Torah into a poetic statement of cosmic processes. Let us turn to the second question raised concerning this passage, namely, it is a story. Is it a story? The Zohar's exegesis on Genesis 33:17 is, on the surface, a highly lyrical description of what is essentially recurrent. The passage includes a description of day and night, of evening, twilight, and the emergence of dawn, daily recurrent happenings. As such, however, the passage lacks the ingredient of time and would not follow any kind of narrative pattern. Though the passage seems to describe what is recurrent in nature, the time factor is nevertheless present at 2 distinct points: the opening and the ending of the account. In its opening, the description turns to the initial divine thought or impulse to bring a world into being, to create the world of the Sephiroth that would then serve as the inner structure of all beings. Thus, the opening of the passage depicts the beginning point of all time. The passage concludes again beyond the realm of the recurrent, at the end point of the drama of both human and cosmic history, characterized by the removal of the forces threatening the Shekinah, the celestial of all threat to the integrity and structure of the world of emanation, and the banishment of death from the world. Together, the beginning and end of the passage establish a time frame that transforms the stuff of basically recurrent description into a narrative in which threat is permanently overcome and a state of wholeness is restored, which I think we read a lot about in the Musar book last week. The descriptive account is inscribed upon canvas, extending from the beginning point of time to its culmination, and in this sense most clearly exemplifies what is encyclopedic in character. It encompasses the larger drama of existence that includes, even if by implication alone, the total human story. The reader has probably noted a highly archetypal nature of this narrative. Its key images are distinctly cross cultural, and it is precisely the presence of such images, it might be felt, which contributes a sense of literary power to the passage. In numerous cultures, both the tree and the house serve as images of the universe. While the tree in this passage refers specifically to the Tiferet, the tree image has the different meanings in various religious traditions. It often suggests the regeneration of the universe and is also associated with the center of the universe. Heinrich Zimmer refers to the inexhaustible life strength that the tree represents to human awareness. In contrast with the finite human lifespan, the tree appears to human eyes never to grow old or to die. In the words of the biblical prophet, for the days of my people shall be as long as the days of a tree, from Isaiah 65:22. In this connection, the tree image suggests the infinite life of the universe and serves as a symbol of immortality. The tree came to suggest an axis connecting the various worlds to its roots, trunk, and branches, with their foliage serving as images of the netherworld. The earth and its celestial worlds, respectively, not only birds, but the heavenly bodies, were thought to connect with the foliage of the cosmic tree. And as an image of seemingly never ending life, the tree became a symbol not only of immortality, the tree or fruit or sap of life, but of the divine as well. Various trees were actually regarded as divine in nature. Some early peoples perceived the universe as a tree encompassing the earth and the heavens, and regarded the light of the heavens as the fruit of the tree of heaven. Goblet concludes his account of the cross cultural nature of the tree image with the suggestions that viewing the universe in the form of a tree constitutes a very natural way of thinking in traditional societies. Identified with Tiferet, pours forth life unceasingly into the universe, a life, however, that in the present state is limited due to the impact of impure powers, sometimes likened to the bark of the tree of emanation. In another passage, the branches of the tree of the Holy One are said to be surrounded by 12 boundaries comprising the boundaries of the world. The tree's 70 branches are said to represent pagan nations, whereas the people of Israel, we read, are situated in the very body of the tree. Very important passage. You can see where the Christians abscond the vine and the branches. I'm the vine, you are the branches notion from. Shalom, Zakia. Nice to have you with us. Hope you're okay down there in Peru. The particular description of the tree in our Zoharic passage conveys a distinct sense of mystery as the tree rises above the rocks, climbing to a lofty region quite beyond human grasp and comprehension. Beyond its reference to the Zoharic world picture and its symbolism, that soaring of the tree of the region of the very highest Sephirot also connotes a freedom from the limitations associated with what is earthly in nature. The image of the house, which occupies an even more central place in the passage, and which specifically symbolizes the Shekinah, also possesses archetypal resonance. In discussing archetypal patterns of imagery, Northrop Frye has drawn attention to a single building or temple or stone serving as a metaphor for the cosmos, drawing from the mineral world, just as the world of vegetation provides for the cosmos the image of a tree. Like the cosmic tree, the image of the house of the world is found in Sefer HaBahir in that earlier text. The image of the house is equated with the divine that transcends what is spatial in character, and referring to Proverbs 24:3, it is implied that the house is built with understanding, or bina. Elsewhere, the author of Sefer HaBahir again focuses upon that same verse from Proverbs: a house is built by wisdom and is established by understanding, and notes the imperfect mode of the verb as indicating an act that is yet incomplete. The true significant stage of the construction of that house, of the lowest of the Sephirot, the Shekinah, it is then understood, occurs not in the past, but in the future time when God will build and embellish it much beyond its present state. The unknown author of Sefer HaBahir also equates Sukkot, both the festival and the place name itself, as found in Genesis 33:17, with that house which will be built by understanding Binah. And he brings as proof text the same verse from Genesis with which our Zoharic passage opens, which is why certain festivals will remain after Mashiach comes and the temple is restored. It all has its links, sure. The very image of a house implies structure to the Zoharic author, or it implies the structure of the higher worlds underlying all beings, including this created material world. This house constructed the house of the world and also the world, a world. In addition to the Shekinah, it also suggests the entire cosmos as grasped in the Zohar's world picture. The divine powers represented more directly in the tree nourished the tabernacle corresponds to that of heavens and earth. Our passage turns this around, suggesting the converse of that thought. The totality of existence is likened to a temple, one requiring protection from defilement that threatens to violate its integrity as a holy place. A ritual Levitical model is applied to the Shekinah and indirectly to the totality of the cosmos. A, the model of a temple is present within our passage, also in the role of Avodah, or worship of the divine, in fortifying the very structure of the house of the world. In his commentary, Zohar-Day, Abraham Galanti pointed out that true worship consisted of both actual acts of worship together with inner devotion, rectifies the weaknesses within the structure. In worship, humans participate in that task of guarding and preserving the integrity of the Shekinah, and with it, the basic divine structure that underlies all existence. Some of the biblical verses quoted within this passage are interpreted in the classical midrashic sources in ways that connect with the image of a temple, and those interpretations are latent in the Zoharic account. In elucidating the background of Genesis 33:17 in the biblical text, a tradition recorded in Yalkut Shimoni explains Jacob telling his brother Esau to continue on his way without waiting for him. Jacob's reasons, we are told, is that he must occupy himself with the building of the tabernacle and the temple. The author of or the compiler of Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, chapter 22, reads Job 38, verses 6 and 7, quoted in our passage, as the angels singing praises following Israel's own praise to God. That reading depicts the entire universe as a vast temple. That same effect, we might note, is captured elsewhere in the Zohar as the radiant stars sing with daybreak, and as angels and stars together sing praises during the last third of the night, extending until daybreak. An interpretation of Psalm 127:1 found in Midrash Tanduma asserts that no human was capable of setting up either the tabernacle or the temple of Solomon. Only Hashem could have established them. This midrashic reading interprets the word bayet, or house, in the biblical verse from Psalms as the temple, often referred to as habayet, the house. The same thought is present in the Zoharic author's reading of the verses, indicating that only God will construct a third temple, and therefore it will endure, unlike the first two temples built by human hands. Interesting. Still, another pattern from the world of ancient myth is overheard in the Zoharic passage and redefined in the idiom of the Zohar. Creation is depicted as a contest between the deity who wills to create and to construct a universe, and two antagonistic force opposed to creation and structure themselves. In this passage from the Zohar, the hostile and defiling force is the Sitra Adra, which emerges as a consequence of the complexities of divine emanation and human sin. That demonic reality is manifest in the threatening spirits and armed camps described in the account. It is the Sitra Adra that brings death into an existence which would otherwise be unmarred by death. The house is secure only when the Sitra Adra is vanquished, and it is God who will ultimately remove the Sitra Adra from the world. It is then that the true nature of the tree as boundless life, the nuance so central to the cosmic tree as archetype, will be realized in a world without death. A more precise treatment both of the narrative art and of the meanings of this highly lyrical, symbolic, and archetypal passage must consider the relationship between this account and its textual context. The text surrounding the story contains a number of motifs and themes that either echo into this account or parallel it. These come together to create a texture in which the story of the house of the world is fully integrated, placed within a landscape appropriate to its own rhythms and motifs and thematics. Elements of this section interweave as the patriarch, Jacob, is identified as the tree of life, and both are identified with the Sephirah Tiferet. This connection provides an exegetical setting for the story. Earlier in the Zoharic exegesis on the Torah portion, Vayishladi, it is mentioned that the beginning of Genesis 32, the angels left Jacob alone, departing from the scene in order to chant the praises of the Holy One, blessed be he. The theme of chanting of prayer and praise and their role in the larger world scheme is present, assuming various forms in what precedes as well as in what follows the account of the house of the world. We read shortly afterward that an angel brings up the prayers of Israel and weaves of them a crown for the Holy One, blessed be he. And God, moreover, yearns for Jacob's prayer. The prayers of the patriarchs, the text goes on to assert, sustained the world, the merit of their prayers constituting the support of both higher and lower realms. And the support that resulted from Jacob's prayer was the firmest of all. Further into the Zohar's exegesis on the same phase of Jacob's life, the text states that when an interruption occurs in the voice of Jacob, a break in the flow of the study and prayer, the threatening hands of Esau become stronger. The Zohar's reading of events in the life of Jacob places an accent upon light and darkness, day and night. It is at night, for example, when the power of Esau is at its greatest strength. The Zoharic author identified Esau, the sibling rivalry of Jacob, and in the biblical account, and a symbol in later historical times of Rome and of Christendom, which succeeded it, as a symbol of the forces of evil in the cosmos. We read that on dark nights, when the light of the moon associated with Jacob, Israel, in the Midrashic interpretations on this portion, is absent, Esau is in the ascendancy. In his reading of the meeting of Jacob, Naharaim, and his returning to the land of Canaan as paradigms of the conflict between the larger cosmic forces symbolized by Jacob and Esau. The paradigm of Adam and his sin repeats itself in the conflict between Jacob and his adversaries. The mysterious man with whom Jacob wrestles is identified as both the angel of Esau, the guardian angel who looks after the interests of the power of Esau, Rome, and also with Samael, the personification of evil and the demonic. Again, preceding the story of the house of the world, we hear that Jacob's combat with the mysterious figure was a conflict with the serpent, with the Sitra Adra itself. It constitutes a parallel on another plane of the same cosmic conflict with the defiling force. The episode of Dinah in Genesis 34, mentioned in the Zohar immediately following the account of the house of the world, is read as relating to the serpents who hid in order to attack Jacob. The account of the house of the world is hence situated within the Zoharic text between two biblical episodes, both of which in their Zoharic reading parallel it in their basic thrust. The evil inclination identified with the serpent, it is pointed out in the same section, constantly seeks to entice man and generally succeeds. Only when a person makes a special effort to strive for purification is he able to rise above the power of the Sitra Adra, seeking to control and subjugate him. It becomes apparent that the real conflict described in terms of the tree and the house is identified with an internal conflict occurring within each person. The concluding passage in the Zoharic exegesis on the portion of Vayishla includes a verse from Proverbs. The path of the righteous is like radiant sunlight, ever brightening until noon, from Proverbs 4:18. The righteous and saintly person successfully resists resisting the impact of the evil inclination is associated with the ever brightening dawn, and by implication enables the dawn to appear in the midst of the kingdom of night. The imagery of light and darkness is drawn from what is cyclical and recurrent, for the moral and spiritual conflict is recurrent, repeating itself in the life of each person. The same imagery, however, in the passage we have been examining, assumes a distinctly linear pattern. The pattern of ongoing conflict our story conveys will be broken, giving way to a condition devoid of conflict. The night of exile in human and cosmic history will be followed by the light of redemption, terminating once and for all the recurrent conflict between the holy and the demonic. At the story's culmination, the Shekinah will be free from threat, the life force no longer limited by fact of death, and the holiness of the supreme temple and of all its existence will be forever unmarred. Wow, what a statement. That's such an explanation of the overarching theme of all existence, for sure. And then he's got tons of notes. The Sephirah of Tiferet, or beauty. All right, so why don't we leave this until tomorrow? Tomorrow we'll come back with Death Postponed, and we'll discuss that then. Hopefully you folks are enjoying Mystic Tales from the Zohar. I know it's a little different than a lot of the books we've been reading, but it's neat to see some sources. The only reason I decided on it is because this area Weinman was highly praised for his explanation of such, that it's very, very digestible, and I thought it would be, a wonderful introduction to be able to put it together. I have no intent of going down any more Kabbalistic themed books. It's just, I think there's just too much opportunity for people to be tempted to try to, use things in the incorrect manner. And I'd rather focus on, character development and Torah, direct Torah-based teachings. But I am seeing a ton drawn out of these couple stories, these couple tales. I think that especially this last one, the Book of Adam was quite unique. I've heard of things like that. The Book of Adam, and then to Abraham, and you see how things have had influence, and there has been a tradition that's been passed on definitively before it got to Moses, and before the Hebrew people were formed. I find the ancient to be just fascinating, and I've got such a passion for archaeological realities that you want to see its connection. But in these ancient stories, I see some threads of connectivity with the ideology in Torah, but then also it harmonizes with the themes of the prophecies, even from Moses through the prophets and forward. And I think there's some great stuff in there for us today. Hopefully you folks are enjoying it. So we're going to sign out readings for today. But please join us back tomorrow. We'll be back the same time tomorrow, where we're going to continue and discuss Death Postponed. Hopefully it'll be exciting. So one other thing is, I did a look for a video out there with my friend Steve Eisenhower in his Rediscovering God YouTube page. We did a third part in a spiritual abuse series where we discussed Reconstructionism, reconstructive theology, which covers a whole vast number of Christian denominations. But it was a good broadcast, and he's only pre-recording and then posting them up later. So it is out there. I shared it earlier today. It's also been shared on several other Facebook pages. Check it out. I think it's worth listening to. and share it as well. I think it will help others get delivered from their Christian idolatry if they recognize the signs of abuse, and it might just allow them to take I can't be a part of that, and step back. And this is why I'm excited to see what he's doing next week. We're going to be doing a topic on Christian worship, the musical angle, and he's got a guest former Christian worship leader he's going to have on his part, and then myself. And so we're going to discuss how it just entrances people. And yeah, so there's lots of wonderful, wonderful things out there. And with Passover this weekend in Israel, I'm only scheduled on with Rabbi Chaim Kaufman for Pirkei Avos, and everybody else is off. Rabbi Poston is busy. Rabbi Goldberg, Rabbi Ingber, they're all off with me this weekend. So just Rabbi Kaufman is the only one I'll be broadcasting this weekend. Thank God I'll be able to get some sleep over my night shifts. But just know I appreciate you all. Thanks for attending. We hope you're enjoying this Mystic Tales from the Zohar. If you got any comments or questions or concerns, please drop me a line. You can always email me, dan.ca@britholam.community, or you can reach me on Facebook. Have a wonderful day, folks. Bye for now.